when it comes to paddling or when it comes to Flohom, it was something that I was already seeking personally before I started the business. And so when I found a way to make it a business, it became that much more purposeful for me to be able to succeed where there really isn't any failure because it's the way I want to live my life. So I was going to figure out a way to do that.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, Slick Talkers, we are back. And this episode is a very special one because I'm excited to sit down with Brian as we got to meet at the Unique Stays Summits with Ben Wolf and Zach Boozy Cruz. We're probably going to hear a lot of guests from that summit on the show, as I was just truly inspired by so many of them that were or that are building incredible brands inside of hospitality. So Brian, let's talk about Flohom. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Will, for having me. I'm excited to share what we're doing at Flohom.
Well, I think you guys are doing some pretty unique stuff. And so without me butchering what Flohom is and the concept, I would love for you to talk about Flohom, the certain structure and model that you guys have built, and then also the beginning of the brand and how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, so Flohom is a experiential hospitality company where we're building luxury houseboats and operating them as short-term lodging experiences, putting them in the premier marinas in the Chesapeake Bay area where we're located today. And we have aspirations of expanding nationwide. And, you know, as you are familiar, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are as well, is just the kind of the new generation of experiential stays, unique stays, and how they're becoming more modernized. Brands or companies are taking their properties off of Airbnb and kind of more focused on direct bookings. And we're applying that playbook similarly to what we're doing at Flohom. You know, we have high aspirations of really creating a big brand and company around Flohom and really modernizing the on-water living lifestyle, which if you take a global outlook of that, it actually is pretty modern in several areas in the world, Europe, Amsterdam area, but most people know about, but also Asia, Africa, India. I mean, there's some really, really cool communities around the world that have had floating communities for generations. And there are a couple niche communities here in the US, the Northwest. Most people know about Seattle, Sausalito. There's actually a community here in the Washington, D.C. area, but there really hasn't been a brand or company to really modernize that and really make it more accessible. You know, accessible is something you'll hear from me a lot, just because typically the boating industry is more of an exclusive lifestyle where you have to own a boat to be able to get into these marinas. And so what Flohom is doing is opening up access to a whole new demographic of people to be able to experience the purity of and the love of being on the water. And that's really, I believe, why we've been so successful is to be able to share that story and market to those types of people to experience what it's like to live on the water.
What got you started with all this? Were you wanting to live on the water? Were you inspired by, I think I told you this at the retreat, the first time I really saw a floating houseboat home type deal was on the Netflix show from a long time ago, like pre-COVID. I forget what it was called, but basically one of the short-term rentals that they helped renovate was a floating houseboat. And then they listed on Airbnb and they had like all the rooms report and just did all the numbers with the owner. So where did you get inspired for all of this?
My inspiration really started just growing up, and I didn't really realize it until I was in my mid-20s, but I was very fortunate to grow up on the water. I grew up on the river in Eastern Shore, Maryland. And as soon as I got my driver's license, I was heading to the beach, learning how to surf, really got into surfing, and then convinced my parents to let me go to school in Hawaii. So I went to University of Hawaii at Manoa, spent 5 years there. And towards the end of my time there, I got curious about learning to do something new other than just surfing. And outrigger canoe paddling in Hawaii is like football or any major sport here in the mainland, where everyone paddles from the minute that you're able to walk to, I mean, you 89 years old, people are still paddling. So I joined a canoe club and immediately became hooked on that culture. And after graduating college, I had the amazing experience of meeting my birth parents. So I was adopted as a newborn. And through that journey of meeting them, I decided to move to Annapolis, Maryland, which is on the western side of the state, in 2012. And after about 2 years, just getting adjusted to really a new life, I got the entrepreneurship bug of wanting to start my own business. I had since they didn't have outrigger canoe paddling in Maryland, stand-up paddleboarding was really becoming a sport, especially on the racing side. And so I became a competitive paddler, started racing all over the place around the U.S. and some international races, and then decided that, hey, it'd be a really cool idea to start a paddleboard shop in downtown Annapolis, which is a historic maritime city. But like a lot of these other historic cities, the only way you could really get on the water is if you owned a boat or took one of the few boat tours. So it really didn't allow a lot of different types of people to experience in that. And so we found a very historic marina in downtown Annapolis that was going to be redeveloped. But in the meantime, the owner thought it'd be a good idea to allow me to open up this business because he wanted some more foot traffic in at the marina. Little did he know what he got himself into. Myself and two of my friends who I brought on as co-founders really blew the business up pretty quickly. It really became an impactful business in the community. One, because it created more access to the water. We also created a award-winning kids camp. One of the best kids camps in the area. And then we were also known nationally just for all the different crazy experiences that we would do on the water, whether it's stand-up paddleboard yoga, LED night tours, yappy hours, people bring their dogs out.
All right, Slick Talkers, sorry to interrupt. As you know, great partners at Minute have sponsored this episode. They sponsor the show. So every episode is filled with amazing minutes. No pun intended. So if you don't know who Minute is or what they do, we see that we have a lot of new Slick Talkers out there in the world. So one, thank you for tuning into the show. Every listen, every time you hit play means so much to me and to my team. So thank you. But if you are new, Minute is an amazing noise detection device. Not only do they measure noise decibel levels inside of your vacation homes or your hotels, they actually can detect smoke. Not only that, if you're an outdoor kind of a unique stay person or just have an amazing outdoor amenities for your guests, from pools to hot tubs to cookout pads, all the stuff, they have an outdoor sensor that is specifically made for outdoor noise, because I didn't know this, but noise outside and noise inside actually makes a difference. So you don't have to worry about constantly making sure, are people partying at your place? Are the cleaners there? Or like whatever, kind of issue might happen, you can get that peace of mind with Minute at your side. So as you grow, Minute will grow with you. They have an amazing team of support, and they have an amazing technology from hardware and the software. When the two marry, it's just a beautiful combination. We use Minute in all of our vacation homes and hotels with our management company, and it's the best decision we've made because we are so dispersed and we are so spread out that having Minute just is a necessity for our operations. So get with Minute, go to the link in the show notes, let them know that Will from Slick Talk sent you. They'll give you a sweet deal. And of course, you know the drill. We're back to the episode, and I hope you enjoy.
So you name it, we would try it. And I think that creativity, because the business was seasonal and also weather dependent. So, for instance, July 4th weekend, it could rain the whole weekend and, we'd lose the entire weekend. So we really had to be creative. And I think that really helped me evolve and apply the creativity into Flohom. And how Flohom came to be is when I decided in 2018 to sell my share of the business to my partners to look for something new. And when I left, I also, we were living at the marina where my business was, and it was time to go buy a home. And I couldn't afford a home on the waterfront or near in downtown Annapolis. And so I started thinking about alternative ways to live. And my wife is a big fan of the tiny home movement. And me, myself, as a waterman, I was just paddling around downtown Annapolis one day and stumbled upon a houseboat. And it was one of the older houseboats that you typically would, apply to what a houseboat would look like. To a degree, it kind of still looked more like a home, which was the curiosity I had. So, yeah, it looks a little different. And I actually just paddled up to it and knocked on the front door just to see if anyone was there. And they were nice enough, the owners, to let me in and talk to me. And when I walked into that place, while it didn't look great from the outside, when I walked in the inside, they had redesigned it and redeveloped it to look like a modern home, like floor to ceiling windows, dining table overlooking the water, modern kitchen, and like a light bulb moment went off. I was like, wow, I could really live like this. And so I then went through the process of actually getting them to sell it to me, because I was like, I want to live on this thing. And that's really from a personal journey, understood the limitations when it comes to trying to purchase a houseboat, especially that old type of houseboat like that, both from insurance, financing, etc. And so end of the day, I didn't end up buying it. And luckily I did find a home in a waterfront community on the bay. So I checked that box off. But the idea of like the houseboat always stuck with me. And when COVID hit, we all got to kind of stop and think about what we wanted to do in life. And I was just kind of really just ideating about really what I wanted to do. And at that time, I had seen that one of the marinas in Annapolis had got a houseboat built, and they put it on Airbnb. And I mean, this thing wasn't anything to write home about, and, was poorly designed, really didn't have any amenities, but I mean, they were getting over $500 a night. And, I was literally going on Airbnb every day, just look at, how they were doing. I mean, they were pretty much completely booked out. So I was like, wow, there's something here. And then from there, I just continued to scrape Airbnb and look at the other houseboats that were, in different parts of the country, mainly in Florida and some in the Northeast. And I was just seeing, I was like, wow, all of these are doing extremely well. Now, granted, it was during COVID, so everything's a little inflated, but I just knew something was there. And that process of one day, my wife and I were driving to her parents' house in Cape Charles, Virginia, which is this amazing bay town on the bay, is that I got inspired. Her and I just talked about the idea, and literally on that drive, we came up with the name Flohom. She kind of just drew out the logo, which is not this one, it's our first one. And then I just made one call to someone who I knew to pitch the idea, and they ended up picking up the phone. And then that led to another conversation, which we can get into kind of some other kind of milestone parts of the journey. But that's really kind of how the idea of Flohom came to be.
Well, I was going to say, you gave me a lot to unpack, and I hope you're okay. I was writing down some notes and just to find the points I wanted to come back to. And I would love to touch on something you very, very quickly went over. And it was that you got to meet your your not adopted parents, but your original parents. And so if you're okay, I would love to unpack some of that. If you're comfortable. So tell me about the story. You were adopted as a newborn, and sometime in college, you decide, I want to go find my birth parents.
No, actually, it was my mom that raised me. My parents, she was out in Hawaii. We were hanging out on the beach, drinking Coronas. And, she was really the one that was like, hey, like, I think it'd be a cool idea. Cause that was a time of my life where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. It was like, do I want to stay in Hawaii? Do I want to move? Where do I move? And again, she was the one that really kind of put the idea in my head. And, she knew who the family was as far as like their name. And again, I never knew, I never asked, because again, I was raised, amazing. I had no desire to, or really wasn't even an idea that would came in my head until she was the one that really put it in there. And
did you know you were adopted before this, or?
So I always knew that I was adopted, but again, like I was raised very well, so it really never kind of crept in my head from a just like a curiosity standpoint. But, with the internet and social media, LinkedIn, it didn't take very long for me to find my birth mother online. Actually, I found her on LinkedIn. And so my first message to her was on LinkedIn, and it was a message because I wasn't friends with her. So you could only leave like a sentence. It was a very short, direct message. And, she received it, and the next day received this very long message from her, and that's really kind of how the communication started. But yeah, in a very short period, I went from not knowing them to speaking to them on the phone and Skyping with them, and it was a time in my life where I loved being in Hawaii, but as you kind of could figure out, even though it was an amazing place, it really is secluded and there's only a certain amount of things you can really do there to live. And I just thought, now's a good time to try something new. And so I just took the big leap and decided to move to Annapolis, Maryland, where both my birth mother and birth father lived, to not only meet them, but also meet all of their families, which I just now, my birth dad has 2 daughters. So I have 2 half sisters, tons of, new family. And so I spent a good year and a half moving back to Maryland and just meeting, all of my new family. Meanwhile, my parents that raised me, I mean, they're amazing. They live in Northern California, extremely supportive. And so, it's a testament to them to be happy and supportive of me in that journey, to allow me to be able to do that, be happy and have great relationships with everyone.
Well, can I ask, because if you you would think, and I have siblings that are adopted, so I can relate only to a certain degree, but hearing how well you were raised with your adopted parents who, like you said, have been so awesome. And it didn't sound like you had, a lot of, I don't know, thoughts about part of you maybe is missing, or that you felt super out of place. It sounded like it's just a very it sounds like a happy ending to a story, right? Was it weird, or was there maybe not weird or unresolved, but was there ever a part of you that just felt like, okay, maybe, it would be good, as a kid growing up, to meet your adopted or your birth parents, but maybe you just didn't need it because you felt so, just established at the actual home you were raised in? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was because of the love that my parents gave me, that I didn't really have any desire or thought. I don't remember any exact moments, but it was one of those things where I knew I was, but I didn't really understand what that meant because I didn't spend any time thinking about it. So I really went into the whole process just open to whatever happened. I mean, if I had contacted them and both of them did not want anything to do with me, I was still living in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I have parents that love me. I have a great life, and I would have been completely fine with that. So I went into this whole thing just having no expectations and was totally ready for any scenario. And I just got extremely lucky that my story was a very positive one. I have a brother who's also adopted, who will never meet his birth parents, probably didn't come from a good situation. So, I mean, every adoption story is different. I'm just very lucky that my story was a very positive one. And that really has been a big part of who I am, especially as I became an adult.
Well, can I ask you, since you've mentioned your wife a couple of times, I'm always curious, and forgive me if I go too far into a personal realm, but in the sense of, what has your story and like you just said, you had nothing to lose, right? If your parents did or did not want anything to do with you, you still had a great life, a great upbringing. What do you think this has done now, finding your adopted parent or your birth parents, excuse me, and now all this new family? How has this impacted you as a husband and a partner? Do you think it's impacted more positively than anything?
I think so. I grew up, I had a brother and a sister, but we kind of my parents' families lived in all different areas of the country. So we never really spent too much time with different families. So I was always very independent and raised in a small family. So with my 2 new families who have very big families, as well as my wife's family is very big. I mean, she's one of 8.
Oh, wow.
It's a male at the top and then 7 straight girls, and she's number so she's the second youngest.
I'm 7 of 7 with 1 brother and 5 sisters, so I know the pain of your wife's oldest brother.
But it was a great learning experience for me because I've never had that family dynamic of lots of people, and so I think that was a big change. Another interesting one is each family has their own family dynamic. So I think the hardest part for me going through that process was, I am who I am and I'm very independent and I'm not someone that hides that, but out of respect and just learning who all these people are, is I kind of not acted, but I was a certain way around a certain family to kind of be in the culture of what they've created. And then I would have to then go from one family to the next family where I'd turn that off and then turn on this at the beginning while I was still getting to know everyone. And then it got to a point where I was like, all right, I am who I am. You guys are going to love me or hate me for who I am. And that's just it. So,
No, I love it. I think it's super cool to hear the personal upbringing of people on the show, especially because we're talking about business and everyone is so passionate about their hospitality business that they've started, but yet there's such a fun and discovery and creative layer of, who you were before you started Flohom or before you started a podcast or before whatever the story is, right? So I would thank you for, going into that rabbit hole with me. But now I want to cover the business you started with your buddies before actually getting into the Flohom biz. Tell me about the learnings from that and what you are carrying over into Flohom and how that's, impacted your business mind rather than just your personal brain and personal mind.
Yeah, I think my greatest asset is my ability to learn, because from a educational standpoint, like I didn't spend a lot, I didn't focus enough to really focus on school the way I should have. I kind of was one of the coasters, but I knew, and also my parents knew, I had something there. I just hadn't found something that applied to me. But the starting my own business, again, not knowing what to do, it was the whole learning process of learning that, and then really just finding something that not only is a business, but it's also my lifestyle, which I think is really the key part of my story. Because when it comes to paddling or when it comes to Flohom, it was something that I was already seeking personally before I started the business. And so when I found a way to make it a business, it became that much more purposeful for me to be able to succeed, where there really isn't any failure because it's the way I want to live my life. So I was going to figure out a way to do that. With Capital Sup, one of the big reasons why we were successful early on is because of social media and creating content that visualized what it is we were doing. And that also is carried over to Flohom, where it's such a visual business, is that you really need to put that out there. And it was right when Facebook, Instagram, both organic and then all their paid ad platforms came about. And that's really where I spent my time, is learning that, because we just got all of our content out there, which then attracted lots of people. And then the word of mouth of the experience that we were creating really just, went into the cycle of just, we were really only open 4 months out of the year, like prime season, but it was just like gangbusters. And and then we had to get creative on the shoulder and off season, how to still generate revenue, which we did. So, the ability to learn and the ability, I think also, like, having not come into business really knowing anything, I don't really ever think I know anything. So I'm always learning, and I'm always able to change my perspective on things, if it makes sense. And I think that's been a great asset, building, especially Flohom, because it's such a new concept. And while there's other unique companies out there that we can compare to, there really isn't a business like a Flohom that exists from building a brand and scaling that. And so really it's like, we're one of the first, if not the first, to do it here in the US. And we're kind of basically, pioneering this whole on-water movement, which, we're obviously extremely bullish on, but we believe the next real estate asset class is on the water, because if you look around the waterfront, there's really no more building opportunity. And so the next frontier is on the water.
I love it. And there's a lot to unpack there too, but I want to just continue to maybe just slowly peel it back. I had a lot of takeaways from the Unique Stays retreat, where people were sharing the most craziest, like, operational structures on how they allow their guests to book next year and, like, offset shoulder seasons and create more revenue outside of, right, like the nightly rates. And so what were some things for you that stood out that either apply or don't apply to Flohom from the retreat that you saw or heard that you think is something unique that more operators can adapt to or adopt today?
Well, I think on a meta level for me personally, and that was really one of the second time this has happened to me. The first time, when I was still with Capital Sup, I was fortunate enough to be invited into this entrepreneurship accelerator program called 10,000 Small Businesses, It was backed by Goldman Sachs and Johns Hopkins and Mike Bloomberg. And that experience is it put me in the room with all these other entrepreneurs in the area. And I hadn't ever been a part of something like that. So I never really knew how to judge or compare what we were doing and what I was doing to others. And really my one takeaway from that experience was that, wow, like I know a lot more than I think I do. And I'm on the path to building something really cool comparatively to what other people are doing based on the knowledge that I know. And that was kind of the same with the Unique Stay Summit, is that like, again, I consider my former business Capital Sup a hospitality business because we were creating amazing experiences. It wasn't what traditional hospitality, or like most people don't think of. Like I didn't come from Airbnbs. I didn't come from hotels. I didn't come from restaurants. And again, I just researched, learned, found things that I thought would be good. And then going to that Unique Stay Summit, again, being around by all of the top operators in this industry, again, from a meta standpoint, I was like, oh, wow, like, I can stand up against or with, the top operators and what they're building and what Flohom is building. So I think that was a big takeaway. But again, that whole summit was such a great learning experience, learning what other people are doing. I had so many just takeaways about just from the experience, from just, from operations, because it's funny, a lot of us use the same like software stack. So having conversations about what we like about it, what we don't like about it. But I think, and I would hope to be a part of more of those, and I'm glad, and I'm hope that there will be more of them, because it's so great to be around and be introduced to people like yourself and just share feedback and insights, because it's all going to make us better at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah. No, they did a great job on the group and the conversations. Getting to meet so many cool people is like, just a podcaster's dream to walk into a room and want pretty much record an episode with every single person there rather than not. So it was I
will say there was one, I enjoyed hanging out with everyone, but I just will highlight one company, which was Hinter. Emily was half of Emily and Mauricio. Emily was there, but I was really connected to Hinter because when I was first starting Flohom, or at least ideating Flohom, I had discovered their company and I went on their website and just started looking at their content. And still to this day, their About Me videos, like when I watched that video, I was like, that is Flohom, except taking like the nature of where they are with the nature of the water with Flohom. But like, I went back on all my old emails to my team and I like found that video. It was like, you guys have to watch this video. This is what I want Flohom to be. And so meeting people like her and others was really an amazing experience.
All right, I'm back. Sorry to interrupt, but you have to hear about our partners and friends at Hostfully. Not only are they an amazing property management software, they're an amazing team. I've been friends and partners with Hostfully for over 4 years now, and it's been an amazing 4 years. I can't complain because as I continue to grow my business with our property management company, they continue to update and grow their products and features within the Hostfully platform, and it just gets better over time. So with us, we have a unified inbox, we have amazing marketplace, not only for the rest of our tech stack to integrate, which is awesome because I work with so many people, but then the third piece is the distribution is built in. So you don't have to fully rely on a channel manager. You can actually rely on the amazing integrations that Hostfully has with Airbnb, Verbo, Booking.com, Marriott, Homes and Villas, you name it. They have what you need in order to get your inventory, your properties to the right people. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but I'm going to tell you this anyways. You're going to get a special deal with Hostfully with the link in the show notes. You'll just have to let them know if you love the product and then just tell them that Wil sent you. So that way you can get that amazing Slick Talk deal. And of course, we're back to the episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. We just had Mauricio and Emily on the podcast this morning. So the episode is coming out before yours is theirs. And it was so much fun. And you're 100% right. I love how, you kind of what you're even talking about. I talked with Emily and Mauricio about, Emily specifically said one moment in the podcast, like, okay, how do we take this one cafe that we loved and recommended to our guests and made it more Hinter rather than less, more Hinter and less Emily and Mauricio. And then I asked them the question, it was like, well, what parts of Hinter is Emily and Mauricio that's not actually like you guys. And we went down a really fun conversation around brand and how the creator of a brand like you, Brian, like what parts of you are in Flohom. And so I guess actually that'd be a great question to segue into. What part of you do you think is part of Flohom as a brand and a company than it is just your overall personality?
I think the visual storytelling, because with Capital Sup, I taught myself how to take photos and videos and edit and really not wanting to be a creator of sorts, but really applying that to the business. And I apply that to Flohom as well, where I shoot all the listing photos, I edit them. On the video part, I don't shoot the videos. I actually work with Content House, and they come out and work with them. They're amazing. We can talk about them too. But I find that I like to tell stories through photos and videos rather than writing. And I think maybe that's from an educational, not paying attention too much in school, where I might lack on the writing side, but I really love to tell stories through visually. And so I think that's been a big success of Flohom, because the quality of our content is supreme in that it really comes off as super high quality, and people know that they're going to be getting an amazing experience just by the listing photos themselves and how intentional and how purposeful they are, because it's not just taking a photo. I know exactly every little part of the boat, the Flohoms, that I want to shoot to help tell the story, whether it's the sunrises or sunsets or the sunrise shooting through the window in the bedroom, like really capturing those moments that I want people to experience on board. And I illustrate that through the content that we create.
I love that. That's such a good answer. And yeah, I'm sure people listening are just like, damn, that was good. But I love it. And I want to get into the Flohom business model, because it's not just a management company, right? Like you guys are actually focused on ownership and now actually letting people invest into a Flohom. If I butchered that, please let me know, because I would love to know the different layers of your guys' business. Because I think a big takeaway from this unique Stay Summit with me was the amount of revenue and layers to these businesses that weren't just a property management company. It wasn't just, let me build my portfolio and get 100 homes, 200 homes, whatever. Yes, there's obviously a lot of people wanting scale, but the amount of different layers of revenue and profitability and building the brand and longevity and sustainability and all this other stuff that I just was completely opened up to at this retreat. So we'd love to know the different layers behind the Flohom model.
Yeah, well, initially we intended to own all the Flohoms ourselves and build the fleet that way. We had started with the builder that built our first several of them, and just in every business there's positives and negatives, and unfortunately that relationship with that builder was not positive, and so we became the builder out of necessity, which now looking back, it's great to control that, but it has made the business more complex, at least early on, now that we've kind of figured it out. So we are the builder. We are the owner of the Flohoms. All the Flohoms we have open to date, we own them ourselves.
Okay.
And we'll continue to own. However, we started receiving inquiries from people, primarily guests that had stayed on board, asking about how they could invest in a Flohom. And we just started thinking about it and put together this program, or just a sales form, just to see what the interest would be. And there's a lot of it, like a lot more than what we initially thought, way more than what the capacity we have to build. And so what we're doing is, we're not building a property management company. We're finding very intentional people that we want to partner with that will own the Flohoms themselves and put them back into our rental fleet. And we're doing that because it helps us get more Flohoms open. It helps us get more data. And it also helps us because we can use the capital from that partner purchase to recycle that and continue building our own. So when we think about long-term growth, that will minimize the amount of additional fundraising and or debt that we'll need to continue building the business. And so we're still very early on discovering what it is, how we want to approach this. But again, I just want to make it clear is that I have no intention of building a property management company, but we do want to find partners, whether they're individuals or companies or the like that believe in our vision and that help us achieve our mission of building this brand and company. So so we got the building part, we got the ownership, and now, we're allowing people to own flow homes, putting back into a rental fleet, and then future looking, but we've just recently started this, is we also want to own the real estate as well in certain cases, not all the time. I mean, all the flow homes that we're in, we don't know the marinas, we don't intend to, but there's lots of interesting opportunities in the marina industry, especially on the smaller marinas, that a lot of them aren't going to be modernized because they're still owned by mom and pop families, and they just don't have the capacity to put the money into modernizing it. And those marinas don't necessarily work for a traditional marina model anymore, boats and slips, but they really work with flow homes in those slips, and finding the right marinas that are zoned that allow us to do both on the water and on land, have a food and beverage concept alike. And so that's what we're looking for. So we recently acquired one in Baltimore City, and we'll continue to look for them and hope to have a portfolio of them for the years to come.
What's lacking in a marina from a modernization standpoint? Like, can you maybe just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So traditionally in the marina industry, it was about boats and slips. So someone owned a boat, they're paying you a monthly slip fee to keep it in the marina. And then historically, the service industry was a big part of it. So boat maintenance, things like that. But as society changes, industries change, and what's happening in the marina industry is, I'm 37 years old. I don't really have an interest of buying a boat, or can buy a boat. And I know people younger than me are kind of feel the same way. And so the marina industry is going to need to figure out how to keep these marinas thriving when there's people buying less and less boats. And so this is where it comes in, like my former company, Capital Sup type of business, and then also a flow home type business, or you'll see boat clubs. So people can basically pay to own the boat, but they don't have to do any of the maintenance. They just show up, take the boat out. There's boat tours, boat rentals, the like. And so I believe, in not all the cases, but in generally, like, you got to diversify your services and attract both boaters and non-boaters. And I believe by doing that, and also creating private and public access as well, because again, traditionally, most of the marinas, especially the best ones, are private access only, which I get and is totally fine. But I think there's a great opportunity to do it right, where you can mix private and public use at a marina to really build a strong community. And in that marina, ideally, you want a food and beverage concept either at the marina or nearby, with the flow home, with the paddleboard operation, with a boat rental, and having all of that together in one property really makes a dynamic business.
Well, I was just going to ask, in the sense of, I would assume, now that I think about it, because I never thought about it this way until you just said that, but hotels have their restaurant or a coffee bar in the lobby. Short-term rentals have their list of recommendations, maybe a market down the road, or a brewery, a coffee shop, etc. But there's really nothing outside of, like, if you have a purpose-built flow home, that's the destination, right? But when you leave that flow home, the marina doesn't really have anything to offer. So you're, like you said, missing out on food and beverage. So if I'm a guest at a flow home, I don't want to cook, but Uber Eats is probably not an ideal situation, because what Uber Eats driver is going to be able to find a boat in a marina without a traditional maybe address system? I could just be naive and not know, but you're thinking about all these things, right? Like, as a guest, it just, you are missing around, like, the 5 feet or 5 blocks around you a little bit compared to, like, traditional hotel or short-term rentals.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what we call our placement strategy. So figuring out where we want to place these. Another interesting thing with flow home, contrasting against a lot of these other unique stay companies, is typically, if you're going to a unique stay, like, you're driving away from activity, like, you're going outside of a city to more of a secluded area, which is totally cool, and I'm down for that as well. But what's interesting with flow home is that we're able to put these in downtown areas, like downtown Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Annapolis, So again, to what you just said, it's like not only is Flohom the experience and people would be just fine with staying on that and not leaving, but
For
then they
sure.
can walk out, go to a variety of restaurants or things to do. And that just elevates the experience even more, both from a guest experience, but also the types of rates that we can
Yeah.
um, charge as well. And again, it just goes back to what does the guests value our experience? And so we've clearly seen in the downtown areas with the experience in our operations is that we're able to, those are the best operating flow homes. And so we're going to continue to find locations like that, especially early on as we build the brand to get that activity and to get that notoriety. And then as we grow and have more inventory, as that we'll seek out more seasonal-ish type destinations, or maybe someplace that is more on the outskirts of a downtown area.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so for the Flow Home Partners piece, you're kind of describing how it works, and you don't want to be a management company. I appreciate you explaining all of that on the kind of like the structure of the model. Would you consider like the partner program maybe more franchise, right? Like they buy in, they still have to go through the management fleet, but I'm guessing they get their traditional owner payout every month. How's the overall like work? Yeah, the overall structure work with that. And would you consider it more of a franchise or more of like a owner investor kind of like or those groups called like a propco type situation, right? Where they buy the asset, they manage the asset, and then whoever's investing gets like a quarterly or some kind of dividend.
So the partner program today is built like a more traditional property management model. Because we're already own the flow homes ourselves and already understand how to operate them.
Yeah.
Our pitch to the partner is this is completely passive. We don't require you to do anything. We're going to do everything for you, and we're going to send you a monthly cash flow payment and a
Gotcha.
report of how well the flow home did in any given month. That's right now, but I do see, and we haven't built it, but I have had conversations with people about more of that franchise type model because we're in Maryland. We will expand, but I mean, there's a lot of places that we could go, and it's just we can't go everywhere at once. And so there are people that have reached out that know how to run successful short-term rentals, hotels alike, and that I see a future where, yes, we will have a franchise model where they'll be able to leverage the Flow Home brand. They'll be able to leverage our knowledge and experience and all the SOPs and operations that we built out. Because again, this is not easy. This is a boat in a commercial marina. Not only can there things go wrong in the boat, but there's also things that can go on in the marina that will affect the boat. And you just have to understand that and be ready for anything. And so getting that knowledge and experience and leveraging the brand that we're building, that someone could be in Minnesota or Michigan or Ohio or wherever where we don't necessarily have an interest there yet. But if someone is willing to take a bet on us and be that person in that given area, like we're open to the opportunity of those conversations, because then it will again help us expand over time faster. And so that is something that we're open to. Again, I haven't like actually built the program out, but are having conversations with several people about that.
I was gonna say, if only Denver had more water, I would be aiming to be one of your first. But no, this is it's super interesting because like already short-term rentals and hospitality in general is just hard, right? Like a hotel is hard. Short-term homes, it could be like a Hinter house, or it could be just your traditional vacation rental house in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or Orlando, Florida, whatever. It's all hard. It's all not easy stuff. And now I even think about it more just about flow home, and like you guys add the complexity of water and boat. And again, that's even harder. And so the level of, or the barrier level of entry is traditionally, I would say, probably a little bit higher in your guys's market than anything else. And so what does the competition look like when it comes to building a company like this? Do you guys have local competitors? Is there an example of a national brand that you guys are chasing after, or are you really just creating this whole new market of open opportunity for real estate, for hospitality, for experiences? Because I've seen it at small scale with the 1 or 2 houseboats, but I haven't seen it at the scale that anybody else is doing like you guys are.
Yeah, so you can find houseboats in different areas in the U.S. and also globally. There are actually a couple of examples recently of floating communities from a hospitality standpoint. There's one in Wilmington, there's one in Ohio that I know of that are all kind of doing similar but different. But I would say what we're doing is different because we're not just relying on one single location. Like we're building a network of these all over the place, and will be the first to kind of take it from a building a brand behind it and something that people will know. Like when they see the Flohom logo or hear the name Flohom, they're going to apply that to the on water living experience. And so while there is competition to a degree, I say we're kind of we're doing something like really different from what the others are. But obviously, competition. Yeah, competition is good. But I would say, there are significant barriers to entry. One is just the production side of things. Like I said, we became the builder out of necessity. Because there really wasn't something out there that we liked and could build at the rate that we wanted it. So that's one. But the big one is placement with the marinas themselves, because historically, houseboats have had a very negative perception in the boating industry. For one, the aesthetic of how they looked didn't necessarily fit the marina. And then also the type of person that was living on the houseboat typically was not the type of person a marina wanted. And so you have that barrier. And then you have applying short-term rentals or Airbnbs. Yeah. And when you put those two together, like marinas are going to hang up the phone or are going to say no. And we had a very strategic way to get approval early on to get started. And then early on, it was all about proving to not only the marinas, but everyone that we can do this the right way, have to be extremely intentional and thoughtful. What most people don't realize, a marina is just like a neighborhood community. I mean, there's people that live on their boats or frequent their boats often where they expect to go down there and have peace and quiet. Like if we're allowing parties and events and disruption happening, they're going to complain to the marina and it's going to become a huge issue. And so that is a very delicate balance that we always have to be cognizant of. And we've done a really good job so far because, again, at the end of the day, there always are going to be people that want to misuse the Flohomes. And we have a very strict process in who we let on. And it has worked wonders because we've excluded the riffraff and have really just focused on the right types of people. And it's gone really well. So I think, I think you'll see, more and more people attempt to try, and some will be successful, some will not. But, I just think the depth of how purposeful we're going at this is that, until I see someone out there that is really kind of investing the same complexity of the brand and the experience and really creating something amazing. I would say we're kind of really doing our own thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds more like everyone else is doing something different and unique, but for you guys, it really is about not just scale, because I think scale these days as a word or term in our industry can be misleading, but it just seems like there's such a potential for more vertical integration. Like you guys have you're the builders, you're the managers, you're acquiring marinas, like there's just such a different layer. So I guess my final question for you is, for entrepreneurs in hospitality that are wanting to have more vertical integration because they're realizing there is a missed opportunity, but there's a lot that goes into it, whether you're managing homes, buying homes, hotels, etc. It can get pretty extensive. And so for you guys, you've done pretty well at integrating into the different portions of it. What type of advice would you give to any hospitality entrepreneurs that are wanting to do the same in order to fully control the guest experience, to fully control the brand and the experience that's going to be had, not only as a hospitality provider, but a business and impact on the local communities that you have and everything else that goes in between?
I would say my biggest piece of feedback is the team. I'm the visionary behind Flohom, but I'm one of three co-founders in the company. And I, at the beginning, knew how hard this was going to be because no one's really done it before. Yeah. It was going to require, it's capital intensive. So raising money, structuring the company the right way. And so I was very fortunate to find two very successful entrepreneurs that have really helped me focus on what I know I'm great at while they can supplement me on the fundraising. My one partner, Marcellus, is the builder. So, I'm not building the Flohoms myself, but it really, if you have a really big idea, or at least an idea you think can be really big, I've always been someone, it's all about the team. You really need a dynamic group of people to really make that vision come to life. And so I would say, depending on whatever path someone's taking, is really think about the strengths and things that you might need to be better at, and go find people that can help you fill those gaps so that you can focus on what you're most great at, which for me is just the day-to-day building, managing people, the marketing, the creative, the guest experience. I mean, currently, like all of the guest communication, all of that, I'm doing myself right now. And I know it's a lot and people might think I'm crazy for it, but I enjoy it because I love talking to people, but I control the experience.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we have raving 5-star reviews across the board, is because I'm controlling that experience to make sure that our guests are having an amazing time. Because then once you've built the foundation, it's much easier to grow, where if you started off and you didn't control that, got bad reviews, people got bad vibes, it would kill the business. So that's one. I also say too is, and again, I'm very fortunate because I found something that is related to my personal life. So the purpose level is just like way above anyone else. But, I think I'm a great example of the American dream of, someone who had an opportunity to go to school, didn't take advantage of it as well as I did. But most of my real world application and my skill sets came from me learning myself in real time while building companies. And I think that ultimately is the best way to build. So even if you don't have all the answers, just go for it. As an entrepreneur, the feeling of purpose, the intensity of what every day brings, like I could never go back to not doing that, because I don't even know what that feels like anymore.
100%. I've spoken like a true entrepreneur too. It's like everyone talks about, like, I could never go back to a 9-to-5 or a regular job. I'm broken. You're broken now, in a good way.
Yeah.
Brian, one of the last questions I ask every guest on the show is, if listeners want to connect, reach out, follow along the journey, what's the number one place you would send them to either connect with you personally or with Flohom indirectly on social or on anywhere else?
Yeah. So our website is flohom.com, FLOHOM.com. You can also find us on all social media, but primarily I would tell people to go to our Instagram account, and it's Flohom_OFC. And then personally, you can also find me on Instagram. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of what I like to do is visual. So I do a lot of posting on Instagram. I share a lot of my water sports activities, which I'm sure people will get a kick out of. And so I'm on Instagram at _Brian Meyer. And I always say, if you have any questions, want to learn more, send me a message. Always happy to chat, share what we're doing. I've had great conversations with people that have reached out, and some potential new business opportunities, and just people that are very supportive of what we're doing. And I enjoy talking to people and sharing what we're doing.
For sure. Well, you got me wanting to go out to Denver and find a plot of water that I could actually put a Flohom in. So if there aren't listeners doing the same thing wherever they're at, I'd be completely shocked and surprised. But Brian, thank you so much for the time, for the vulnerability of sharing your story from early childhood to the business and the model and the brand you guys are building today. Super impressive. Super glad we got to meet at the Unique Stays Summit with Zach and Ben. And yeah, just want to say thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Will. Been a fan of your show for a while and excited to get on here and talk to you, and look forward to some future discussions as well.
Oh yeah, definitely gonna be some more. So for all the Slick Talkers, make sure you like and subscribe. All things, not only this show, but for Brian and the Flohom. So that way you can stay tuned, and obviously make sure that you catch the second episode that I do with Brian sometime in the near future that we'll plan and coordinate here again soon. So thank you so much. And like always, we'll see you guys again next week.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.